We have a dog. I think we're ready to get things underway. With that, I would like to call this meeting of the Transportation Commission to order. And Mr. Freed, if you would take a roll.
Commissioner Graham. Visually signaling here. Commissioner Javindale.
Present.
Vice Chair Fong.
Here.
Chair McCroskey.
99% here.
Commissioner Belizario is absent.
I'm going to read the following statement. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lejeune. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must take strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. With that, I would like to open up the public comment period. This is the general public comment for items not otherwise on the agenda this evening. If you're a member of the public in attendance and you'd like to make a comment, please use the raise your hand feature. I think it's also *9 if you're on a phone. And we can take your general public comment at this time. Looks like we have one.
We have one right now, Jeremiah.
Right, and we're going to hold you to 3 minutes.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So in front of Five Tacos and Beers, there's this really big plant on a barrel. It's a really big green bush, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And when you're driving west down Solano, the bush is blocking visual of people trying to cross a crosswalk. I've mentioned it so many times, and it's like the bush is still there. It's not being trimmed, and it's just a plant sitting on top of a barrel. And it's really dangerous, and it's just a plant. So I don't see what the big deal is, why it can't be moved or trimmed. Anyway, so that's a safety hazard. Also, I've witnessed AC Transit buses. One in particular last Friday, I believe. It was a gross polluter. I didn't get the bus number, but it was right on Evelyn, Cornell, and Solano, and just all this black smoke just dumping out of this AC Transit bus. I mean, just imagine kids and elderly walking across the street, and everybody just inhales all this black diesel, and it's just terrible. So I was just wondering, if we could send AC Transit a letter and say that all their vehicles need to be serviced, they need to pass smog, kind of thing. So there's that bush that's dangerous. Also 10th and Monroe, I've mentioned it a few times. 10th and Monroe, I think that should be a 4-way stop. Coming from the village towards San Pablo, going east and west, there's no stop sign on 10th and Monroe. And there's an AC Transit bus depot, turnaround, whatever you want to call it. And there's no stop sign there. And you got a senior home right there. It just doesn't make any sense. And all those crosswalks on right there in the Sprouts Plaza, coming from Starbucks to cross the street right in front of Habit, there's no pedestrian signs. The crosswalks aren't even striped. It does not make any sense. I hope someone takes some action on making our streets safer. It'd be great. Also, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'm not seeing any further attendees, let alone requests to comment, so we'll pull it back. We can't take any action on the items that have been mentioned. Certainly, we have Public Works here with us tonight, so let's refer the Bush item to them. We don't have jurisdiction over AC Transit, but if you tell them the time and the stop, they can track it back to a bus in particular and make sure that bus potentially make sure that bus is compliant. I'm not sure the smog thing works in the same way as cars. And Jeremiah, you should know that there is an upcoming UC project to build the corner of Monroe and Jackson. And you may be able to propose to them during that process to get some kind of traffic change involved at Monroe and 10th. So look for that. With that, let's move right along to the presentations.
Thank you, Chair McCroskey. Reporting on the collision data from police reports for the month of January. There was one pedestrian collision reported, 0 bicycle collisions. There were 11 vehicle collisions, 2 of which were injury collisions. 7 moving citations were issued and 4 DUI arrests. And that concludes the police data reports.
Any commissioner questions? I'm not seeing any. It looks like we have a public comment request. Let's go ahead and take that.
Okay, Jeremiah, go ahead.
Thank you. So the pedestrian collision, I was just wondering if there's possible an intersection or kind of where it was located. You know, we don't need anybody's names, I guess. But maybe I was wondering, is that potentially around a school, or is that somewhere where a crossing guard could be? And how old was that person? Thank you.
All right, not seeing any other members of the public asking questions. I'll bring it back to the commission. Do we have any information about the location or demographics?
No, we're generally not able to get that level of detail in the monthly reporting, but we take an annual look at the location and other factors with vehicle collisions.
Okay. Great. Any commissioner comments? I like to say that it's good to see collisions come back down after December and January when they were quite a bit higher. So that's encouraging. Thank you for that presentation and the rolling data. Let's move right along. Do we have shared mobility data this month?
No, I'm still waiting to hear back regarding the November, December data. So let's put that off till next month.
Okay. And we'll put that item aside. And we'll move on to the consent calendar tonight. The consent calendar has one item on it. Our Transportation Commission meeting minutes from January 27th. Does anyone have comments on the minutes and wish to pull from the consent calendar? Not seeing any. Can I request a motion?
I'll move approval of the minutes.
I'll second.
Javandel proposes and Graham seconds. Any discussion? Mr. Freed, can you take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Graham,
Yes.
Commissioner Javandal,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fong,
Yes.
Chair McCroskey.
Aye.
Minutes approved.
To approve, consent calendar completed, and we'll move on to item 5, our discussion and possible action. And we're going to start with item 5.1, the plans for the Marin Avenue Pavement Project.
Let's bring up Allison Carrillo. Allison will be presenting this item.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be back. Good evening, everyone. I'm gonna just start with a kind of a big picture overview of where we are on this project and the changes since we last presented in May of last year. So I think the largest change is that we're finding that we've had to phase the project. You may notice that the plan set presented tonight is from Cornell Avenue to Key Route. With the exception of the striping and signage drawings, which were accidentally extended into Pomona, please ignore the Pomona intersection. We are only going to Key Route. This change was due to some utility coordination with East Bay Mud. The existing water line in that area is very shallow and approaching the end of its useful life. And the risks to both the East Bay Mud facility during construction and the risks to our brand new pavement after construction necessitated us phasing the project into these two sections so that the water line could be replaced ahead of the paving project. We considered having the whole project done at the same time after water line work, but due to the Masonic intersections, we needed to make sure that we had the curb ramps constructed at the at that intersection, at the Masonic intersections. Currently, the plan is to, for East Bay Mud, is for them to start construction this fall and finish in the early parts of next year, and we would start phase 2 project shortly thereafter. Let's see, on the project front, I'm actually going to start sharing my plan set so that I can start pointing out some of the developments to everybody. Give me a second. All right, can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So let's go over. So the pavement section on this project, where we've reviewed it in more detail, and it looks like we're going for a 2-inch mill and overlay, with the exception of the intersections. And this is because we were taking care of most of the dig outs. At the intersections with the changes to crosswalk grades, we had to flatten it for ADA accessibility. And with dig outs in between intersections, we found that we can do a 2-inch mill and overlay. This will be much less disruptive to the community and provide a similar finished product. Moving on into the transportation related elements. One of the changes that we're presenting tonight was that we did refrain from doing bulb outs or other improvements that would impact the ability to put in future protected bike facilities, with the exception of locations where it's a priority pedestrian network. For example, at Talbot intersection where there's RFBs, and Masonic intersection where there's existing plans to put in bulb outs. So other than those two locations in phase 1, we have tried to follow those recommendations from our last meeting. We've also included 4-legged crosswalks as requested, and coordinated with the Masonic Intersections for the striping and signage, or this, I should say, the striping that's going in under that project to make sure it's consistent. On the Talbot intersection, one of the improvements we're doing is we're moving the RRFB out slightly into the bulb out area, which will provide a little bit more visibility for when pedestrians are crossing. This is also necessary in order to make sure that the push button is located at a location which is as required by the ADA ramp construction. Moving up Marin, we have also an improvement to the existing ADA parking spot. This is a Caltrans standard parking stall. We'll go into more detail as we get into the detailed design drawings, but just wanted to show this improvement as well. Let's see, we've incorporated the requested 2-foot buffers, 4-foot bike lanes, and 2-foot buffers with 10-foot vehicle lanes. So with a 7-foot parking stall. Let's see. Other improvements include extensions of the green bike lane through the intersections for a more continuous kind of visibility for bicycles. On the curb ramp front, we've taken the previous conversations we had about Albany preferences and applied them as, you know, to our curb ramps to the extent we could. What this means is that where we can, we try to place the type A curb ramps in order to provide more directionality and maintain stormwater flows around the curb ramps. Where possible, we try to also maintain walking path so that it's consistent through both the crosswalk and into the directional ramps. On certain areas, this due to encroachments or the exact configuration of the corner that wasn't possible. In those cases, our preference or our direction to our designers was to keep the crossing across the street. This is not a great example because these are aligned in reality, but they don't show up that way on the detail. But our preference is to have the 2 ramps in the crosswalk be aligned so that somebody entering the right of way doesn't have to reorient themselves to cross the street, and that where they may need to reorient themselves is at the corner where it's safe from vehicle traffic. Let's see. We've also included the Albany preference to have rounded corners and for the return curb to be situated so that it's outside the path of travel. And we're also requesting that all of our domes be oriented in the direction of travel to make it as usable as possible, not just for the visually impaired, but also for wheelchair users. Moving into the Masonic Avenue intersection, this is familiar. We've revisited this a few times on Masonic intersections, as well as our conceptual drawings for Marin paving. One of the changes that has occurred on this intersection is that because we were able to take this intersection civil improvements, such as the curb ramps and paving, out of the Masonic Intersections project, which was primarily a signal project, we're able to take care of the grades within the intersection, meaning that we're more easily able to take care of a very steep incline coming out of ramps with the high center line of the roadway by both lowering the roadway slightly, but also in this case, we're adding an inlet here, which allowed us to raise the sidewalk here slightly, very slightly. It's still going to be ADA compliant, but it essentially allows us to maximize our ability to create a uniform intersection by tackling it under one project. This stormwater improvement here will also benefit pedestrians who are using this intersection, as they won't experience quite as much flow coming around the corner. Moving on to the south side of the intersection, we're also able to make improvements to the southwest corner over here to move the ramps away from this corner, this property corner here, which previously would have been impacted, so that we have two separate type A ramps with separation and a much more open area here. And that again came from the ability to take care of the civil improvements under one project versus trying to have them separated into two separate projects. I believe this key route intersection, the southwest corner, is the one location within this phase one limits where we do have a modified C. For this ramp, we are doing quite a wide ramp. This is partially because this is a very narrow sidewalk on key route, far narrower than usual, and not as much encroachment space to work with. And so we needed to get as much room as possible for pedestrian access for street crossing in this area. And then the next drawings in this set show the grading changes. So where you see dashed lines, this is where there will be adjustments for the intersection grading, but where we're not doing full depth restoration or replacement. This is, again, we're looking at balancing lowering of intersections with raising of street corners or sidewalk corners. And this is a slight change from what was originally presented last year. Last year, the way we showed this was that every intersection was going to be lowered. And what we found is that we could have some cost savings by making changes to the stormwater inlets and adding one or two inlets, which benefit both pedestrians and project costs, as well as impacts to community during the reconstruction of the intersection. And so what you may recall is full depth reconstruction, bringing everything down at every intersection. And we're trying to get a product that's more balanced in our approach. I think what we had before was the worst case situation, and with the detailed design, we were able to improve and do a more, I would say, efficient design. Where you see the darker area, this is areas where we do have to do full depth restoration because of the more significant changes to roadway slopes. And you'll see it, Masonic Intersections, where there is a fairly significant crown in the middle that we, again, were able to address with a combination of that stormwater inlet and some minor impacts, well, more major reconstruction impacts. However, it's far less lowering of that street than would otherwise have happened had we not put that storm drain there. And key route as well. We have more significant impacts here, but the finished product will provide both a more compliant crosswalk in all directions, and we're also extending our conforms out to minimize how much up and down will be felt by both vehicle and cycle traffic. Finally, this one is a bit small, but it's showing the location of the new RFB push button, both at the level landing and the new RFB, which is located a few feet off the face of curb and is more visible to vehicles as they're traveling up and down Marin. With that, I've reached the end of the plan set, and I'm be happy to answer any questions or provide any clarifications.
Thank you very much. Are there any commissioner questions? Commissioner Graham.
Would you mind just walking me through the crosswalk striping and the difference that I think we can see, or at least at the plan set here, between the yellow and some of the others?
There you go. Is there a specific question or just generally talk about the colors? And
Could you articulate the difference between what the colors are showing? Does that mean that those are yellow versus white?
exactly, yes.
Okay.
So the yellow is because of the nearby school with
Uh-huh.
Cornell Elementary.
And then I guess that my question, sorry, I'm out of the like crossing sidewalk crossing game. When I look at the aerial, like of what is at Talbot versus Marin, it seems like all of them are now, I don't know what you called the striping where it's the lines on the, I mean, is this the literal striping of it? And is this what is the most up-to-date sort of acceptable version? I'm just looking at the aerial to try to understand the difference, and I haven't paid much attention to this lately. So I guess I was just hoping you could sort of articulate why the choice is here for, I guess I get the yellow because it's schools, but the sort of delineation of the crosswalks.
So I'll try to answer to the best I can, and Justin, feel free to jump in. These are called 444s, and these are the high visibility markings that are the latest standard in the city of Albany.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I don't have much of the history of it. So if you want to dive into kind of the history of where we got here, I think that's something that Justin would be able to speak to.
That's okay. I'm not questioning it. I'm just, if that's what it is, it's what it is. So the differentiation is just, it's the 444 everywhere where it's not stop controlled. And then here it's yellow because it's in a school crossing.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Other commissioner questions? I can see Commissioner Jamandel, but not Commissioner Fong. Oh, there he is. I don't see any more questions. Although, Commissioner Jamandel, you were close to the screen, so I assume you have something.
Yeah, I do have a question. And maybe I'm misreading something here, but the Evelyn intersection, in advance of the crosswalks, it looks like we have stop lines.
Yeah, I see that. That, I believe, is probably an error.
Okay.
I don't see why we would have stop lines there. It
Okay.
may have been some copy and pasting happening.
I mean, yield lines might be okay, but yeah, not having stop lines would help. Thanks.
Good catch. I'd like to say thank you for taking into consideration all of the curb cut preferences, and looks like a great job on that. I was curious, we spoke a little bit last time about putting some kind of marking on the sidewalk to highlight the quick cut at Masonic on the northern side, the quick slide through from the bike lane to the sidewalk. Yeah.
Yes, this one needs a little bit more development. Our designers got the conceptual drawings and haven't fully implemented the comments there. We will be having them take that into account. There are some things that aren't accurate here.
Appreciate it, and I won't ask you what else there is.
No, what I mean is the striping. The rest of it, I think, is accurate based on what we had presented. But the striping was not updated based on those comments.
Great, thank you. Just want to make sure it was still in the mix, and whether it was this project or the other project, which is a little confusing as well. any other commissioner questions? Seeing none. I'm sorry, Commissioner Graham.
Sorry, I have another
No.
one. Going to the Masonic intersection, where you have the green bike at the top, and you have bike and bike. Is that actually what it's going to look like, or is there going to be like a bike sort of turn decal on the ground, which is denoting that they're there if they want to make a left-hand turn?
I don't believe when we last went through this on Masonic Intersections, I don't believe there was a turn symbol. I think it was just two bikes.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's something that you want us to take a look at, we can.
I'm assuming that there's some sort of standards that I don't know about. So if there are, I would assume we would apply it. And if not, then I will hold my comment, I guess. So I guess if you could look into it, that would be great.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
Okay, last call for commissioner questions. Seeing none, we'll accept any public comment on this item. Looks like we have one.
That's right. Jeremiah, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so the screen you have up now on Masonic, I noticed on both sides of Masonic, right before the crosswalk, you have two bicycles next to each other. And I was just wondering, does that mean caution for the bike lane going up and down Marin? Or are those two bicycles in Masonic right there before the crosswalk, is that saying that the road is actually bike lanes? Because I'm just thinking there's the BART trail right there, and hopefully bikes are using the BART trail to go down Masonic instead of riding the bikes on the street. So that was just kind of confusing. And then my next thing is, I really am excited they're striping the word slow school on the ground. I think that's great. It gives cars a heads up that there's school. I was wondering, are there any signs on Marin that say school crossing right there for Cornell and Talbot? I was wondering the signage. And also the colors. So I don't know who got to pick yellow. I don't know if it's a state regulated thing or something, but I know yellow starts to fade after a while and it's kind of a dull color. White is actually brighter than yellow, kind of makes it stand out more. I think yellow is kind of just the default color, I guess, for schools or school zones or something. But if we're going to keep yellow, can we make it a fluorescent yellow or some sort?
Jeremiah, it seems like your audio has cut out.
Yeah, we lost you.
Last thing I want to say. Yeah, sorry. The last thing I want to say is the push button LED crosswalks. I am all for that. Please put those up. I was just wondering the cost of the push button LED crosswalk lights. I'm just wondering the cost. Thank you.
Thank you. So staff, can you address the color of the school crosswalks briefly?
Justin, would you mind taking? Thank you.
The question was the color of the signs.
The question was the coloring of the yellow differentiated school crosswalks, and if that's a standard, and if anything could be done to pump them up to both last longer and be more differentiated.
It is a standard. It's within a distance of a school. I think it's 500, 600 feet, something like that. So we have it at the Cornell and Talbot Marin crossings. And the color is California MUTCD standardized, I believe. Don't
Great.
think we have a lot of flexibility on color.
Okay, there was a question about how much it costs to install forgetting the word for it, but the push button crossing with the blinking lights in round numbers.
One at Talbot was installed, so this one is going to be just moving it primarily. But there's the direct equipment cost, Mark.
Yeah, so I did some digging into this, and just if you wanted to have a rough order magnitude budget for an installation in a corner, I would use around 20,000, and that's gives you a little bit of leeway for moving things around, or not everything's going to be perfect. Some are going to be more expensive, some are going to be less expensive. But if you wanted a ballpark, we're thinking about 20,000 based on our purchase of an installation cost here.
Thank you. I would add to that bulb outs add a lot more cost, but exponentially.
Yes, this is just to be clear, this is just the beacon piece and nothing more.
Yeah. I know there are plans to put some of those on San Pablo Avenue. We still have to be a little careful though. If we started putting them all over the city, they would have much less impact. So we need to be judicious in choosing where to put those. Okay, Commissioner comments and opinions, approbation or Rotten Tomatoes. Not expecting any of those. Commissioner Graham.
Two things. One is just when you're speaking in public about things like RRFDs, I would just encourage you to use sort of more customer-friendly language. That's all, because I think people are really excited about things like these when they understand what they are. And then my only other comment is, I appreciate the hard work of the staff and CSG consultants. You've done a lot of work since the last time. And I really do appreciate the hard work that a lot of people don't notice when you're talking about the grades at the intersection for saving money. And also it has a lot of impacts. Those are things that not many people really understand the impact in their world, but I would just say good job. And I appreciate you both saving money and also working hard to, make the best design. So that's all I have to say.
Great. Other commissioner comments? I guess I have a question. I'm not completely clear on the pavement, the form of pavement replacement. Last time we had a long discussion about reallocating funds from bulb outs into reshaping the roadway itself. And in fact, I think that was mostly, or a large part of that was aimed at the space between intersections. So do we still get some reshaping of the roadway between intersections in this project? I guess is the question. Allison, you're still off mic.
I'm sorry. So we are going out some, but because we were able to more efficiently get through this project in terms of not having to lower as much, the relative cost savings between bulb outs and removal of the quarter crown is lessened. And so we're getting a larger difference in cost between shaving that off, where we would have to, instead of just doing a 2-inch pave, taking 2 inches off, replacing with 2 inches of pavement, we would be now extending the amount of this, what looks like an 8-inch change, but actually ends up being, closer to a 12 to 18-inch excavation and extending that out. And the cost savings that we, or the cost comparisons we were showing last time are something that we're just not going to realize here. We have looked also at requirements in terms of cross slopes. And there might have been a misstatement last time about standards for that. There's actually not necessarily a standard for that cross slope that we were able to identify. What I will say is that it's not what's out there right now is the existing condition. And if we were to extend it out and remove entirely within the rest of the block, we would end up essentially taking this very intensive 18, maybe even 24-inch change and spreading it out on a project that really is now appearing to be one where we only need to take off 2 inches to the top and put back 2 inches. In phase 2, you'll see that there's quite a bit more conform work where we extend out in order to improve what we can within the confines of what we think is reasonable under this project. And there's also more bulb outs that are removed. But in this section, the existing pavement is also less steep than as we get into phase 2. This area tends to be much flatter. The crown isn't, so with the exception of the Masonic Intersection, it's not as exaggerated as it is further up Marin.
Okay, thank you for that information. If you recall, one of the intents of shifting was to make sure that it would be possible to come back and put in a protected bike lane in the future as an option. Could you confirm that is maintained under the current design?
As far as I'm aware, it is still maintained.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fong.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, that's good that you asked about the protected bike lane. I was going to confirm that as well. I think I saw in the staff report that it said that it should be compatible with a protected bike lane. So that's also a priority for me, I think. But overall, I'm very impressed with the work. So I'm in approval, assuming that that's all true.
Would you like to propose a motion, Commissioner Fong?
Sure. I can propose a motion to support the staff recommendation here and the plan as written.
As presented by staff with the corrections as noted.
Yep.
Great. We have a motion. Can we get a second?
I'll second the motion.
Commissioner Graham, thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Freed, could you please take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Graham,
Yes.
Commissioner Zavendal,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fong,
Aye.
Chair McCluskey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Terrific. Thank you for the presentation and all the hard work. And looking forward to seeing this move forward.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to item number 5.2, the potential for lowered speed limit on Solano Avenue.
There we go. Thank you, Chair McCluskey. So this item is following up on our discussion most recently in October. Currently, Solano Avenue has what's called a prima facie speed limit of 25 miles per hour, which is basically the assumed speed limit without posted speed limit signage to the contrary for a residential or business district. AB 43 made several changes to the California Vehicle Code, including the addition of section 22358.9, which allows for 20 mile per hour speed limit in what was identified as a business activity district if the current adjacent limit is 25 miles per hour. a lot of the other elements of the law await state guidance called for in the legislation and take effect in 2024. Business activity districts are defined in this section as those that meet 3 of 4 requirements, and we assessed that Solano Avenue meets the 3 of 4 that are bolded here, that 50% of the frontage is retail and accessed from the adjacent sidewalk, that parking is adjacent to the roadway, and that marked crosswalks are not controlled by a traffic control device. The existing conditions, so we provided in the memo this month, several new traffic surveys that were conducted and one older survey for comparison. These 3 surveys were conducted in early February at the intersections of Cornell, Ramona, and Peralta. And this also shows the outdoor dining installation placements for reference. The surveys were conducted with pneumatic tubes at locations spaced away from traffic signals and at the intersections to minimize issues with parked vehicles interfering with the data collection. We separated out the eastbound and westbound traffic. There has been some discussion around sort of the downhill slope and speeds being different in westbound and eastbound directions along Solano. The largest spread in speeds between those were at the Ramona intersection with the half a mile higher speed at the 85th percentile speed in the westbound direction. And the highest quantity, sort of volume of going over 25 was at Peralta with an additional average 58 vehicles going over 25 miles per hour. The volumes appear to still be lower than pre-COVID conditions, comparing the 2 nearby ones at Cornell and the Cornell-Talbot block. Those counts were 1 block off, so school traffic and differences between the 2 blocks could account for some of that difference. Speeds are also lower compared to that 2015 count, though again, different activity a little bit between the 2 blocks. But that did show, apart from the different block factor, a decline of a couple, almost 2 miles per hour difference in the 85th percentile speed, and a drop of 150 plus vehicles going over 25 miles per hour. As a point of comparison, I showed some of the traffic calming survey counts we've done and compared when we were looking at an update to our traffic calming policy. The ones in green at the bottom here are the Solano numbers, showed combining the eastbound and westbound traffic, so it's an equal comparison to the other numbers. The 85th percentile speed and the volume over 25 miles per hour are lower than some of the residential streets we've evaluated previously. But this is a commercial corridor. There is significant bicycle and pedestrian traffic, the outdoor dining, that's the change condition that we've discussed a bunch recently, transit service along Solano. So this isn't really an apples to apples comparison. And the exposure to risk is also a function of the number of people being exposed, not just the number of moving vehicles. And I think that's one reason the legislation singles out business activity areas for this lowered speed limit. Brought up a question to consider and interested in feedback on the signage. We didn't put out some advisory 15 mile per hour signage associated with the outdoor dining facilities. And we're talking about now posting 20 mile per hour signage. Are those complementary? Are we giving mixed signals? And should we really be choosing one strategy or the other? The other being with the angled parking in particular, the sidewalk for the most part is pretty deep away from the vehicle lane. So I think we'd be looking at speed limit signage on the existing light poles, which we've used for some of the parking signage in the past, or signage at the curb extensions for where we would actually place these. And just doing a basic assessment of the entrances to the district from the east and west, and sort of the departures from the signalized intersections where more of the traffic would be entering Solano. We'd be looking at approximately 8 signs, maybe an additional at Peralta with volumes that, due to the signal at Marin and Peralta, there's a decent amount of traffic that enters from that as another potential additional couple of signs. So. And so, in summary, I think that this measure would reinforce safe driving speeds along the commercial corridor, particularly as has been discussed in conjunction with the long-term outdoor dining or long-term parklet program. There is some evidence from this that outdoor dining has helped change the conditions of the street and encouraged lower speeds. I think the two would reinforce each other, but additional measures will still be needed in conjunction with lowering the speed limit to significantly change driver behavior. The signage itself only has so much of an impact. We do have a capital improvement project identified for shorter term striping improvements based on the complete street study. That would be another step. And we are going to be embarking on a local road safety plan, which will provide another opportunity to look at roadway safety, particularly along Solano Avenue. And with that, I'd be interested in questions and feedback, particularly on the question of the 15 mile per hour advisory signage, if we are proceeding with the 20 mile per hour regulatory signage, any feedback on the placement or other issues. And I'll be looking to bring this in conjunction with the pilot, or the long-term outdoor dining program. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Fong wants to start us off with questions.
Great, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Justin. Yeah, just about that question about is it compatible? Is it compatible to have both the signage on the street as 15 and also the regulatory 20? It sounds like that's an option that we could consider. Is that right? Kind of as it is now, except that it's 15 and 20 instead of 15 and 25.
Yes, we currently don't have any posted 25 mile per hour signage. They are both permitted, an advisory sign saying slower conditions. It's highlighting at the outdoor dining facility. We do have outdoor dining up and down the corridor. So partly it's a question of, and I don't know that there's a clear answer of which is more effective, to have, one clear speed limit being posted on the corridor, or having the 20 mile per hour regulatory signage with additional advisory around the installations.
Thanks.
Who else? I had a question. Sorry, it was slipping my mind for a sec. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Rosario isn't here this evening, but my question would be, if we implemented a 20 mile per hour speed limit on Solano, would AC Transit honor that speed limit and change their timetables accordingly? I don't think we can find that out this evening, but that's a question for future. And I guess the ancillary question is, to what extent do they actually enforce their timing with drivers? And, could we expect the buses to go 15 to 20 miles per hour? We don't have breakouts for bus speed from our surveys, but from personal experience, I think the buses tend to steam along. So
It's a
Other-
question we can pose to them. I'm guessing that their timetables, given the stopping frequency, are the average speed is slower, but whether they take into account the slower maximum speed, that we can ask them that. I don't.
Great. Any other commissioner questions before we open it up for public comment? Seeing none, please invite Jeremiah in.
Great. Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Thank you. You know, I'm going to try to go to an AC Transit public meeting and try to have a fair public comment there. Yeah, so I am so excited this is on the agenda. I mean, I would suggest 15 because the point is to make it safe, and our city's getting more dense with people population. So we're going to do a lot of work, possibly spend some money. And I did my own survey. I drove up and down Solano at 5 miles an hour and at 10 miles an hour, at 15 and 20. 10 miles an hour is actually perfect. 15 is actually too fast to even stop if a kid's running across the street or a car is trying to back out of a parking spot. Even 15 is a little fast. But the safest speed limit for me on Solano is between 5 and 10 miles an hour, because I assume someone's going to cross the street in front of me, and it usually happens. And I kind of play a little game. I kind of look for pedestrians to stop. So I don't know, maybe I'm just a safe driver, and Solano's a nice area. We do have a lot of outdoor dining, which a lot of people don't use the crosswalks, okay? Especially between, you know, Cornell and Evelyn. There's the post office. There's a copy place. You know, everybody's running across the street. You know, I experienced that myself the other day. Someone running across the middle of the street, you know. I don't know. I just would encourage people to use the crosswalks, but I'm all for 15. Hopefully, you know, we could do something like that. 20 is definitely an improvement. I'm happy with anything as long as it's safe and slow. Oh yeah, I remember one of the best things I was gonna say. Whatever we do with the speed limit, whether you guys agree it's 15 or 20, I'm sorry, everybody agrees 15 or 20. Could we paint the mile per hour on the street? Can we write the mile per hour on the street, paint it like we were gonna do on Marin with the slow school? So maybe, because the signs on the side might be, you know, an eyesore, but if we paint it on the ground, that could possibly be enough. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Bring it back to the commission. Commissioner comments and opinions. Commissioner Fong.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, staff, for this. I really enjoyed the report, and yeah, I think definitely something that's very exciting, and I think follows on very well to what we discussed last meeting. Just seeing the results of the study about how many people are walking and biking to Solano, and seeing I think it was a much longer amount of time that those people are spending on Solano, it gives me more reason why we should be prioritizing their safety. So I think this is great to reduce the speed limits. Yeah, I think I am open to reducing it to 15. I'm curious what other people think about it, but I think 20 is definitely an improvement. And I think, yeah, I'm open to the different signage, but overall, I think that this is a very positive development, and definitely kind of will create even more vitality for Solano Avenue, and also create more safe conditions for pedestrians and bikers, which, as we've seen, had been going up. And I think, you know, definitely over December and January, we saw a big spike there. So I think this is a very positive move.
Okay. So you're bringing up again the idea of actually changing the speed limit to 15. Mr. Freed, is that possible under this new law?
What's allowed under this section is reduction to 20 miles per hour.
Okay.
This 15 miles per hour we've used with outdoor dining is what's called advisory signage. It's the yellow signs. It's saying you should drive slow, but it's not enforceable speed limit.
Well, in that case, then maybe 20 then with advisory signage would be what my what I would think, but open to what other people think about that.
Great. Other commissioner comments? Commissioner Graham.
I beat you. I was waiting. I was going to give you your chance if you wanted to.
You guys are playing chicken. Yeah.
So I have two comments. I'm supportive of thinking about it. I'm supportive of changing the speed limit to 20 with the 15-mile advisory signage. I do think that, as you suggest, it needs to be thought about holistically, along with the parklets or the dining in the streets. Jeremiah's comment earlier, I live on Stanage, and he's right about that plant that hangs over there. I'm at that intersection often. And so I think it's all the same story that we're working on, right? And so I think speed limit is really one piece of the greater design guidelines and visibility that we have to work on for if we're going to have long-term in-street dining. So that's my comment.
Commissioner Javindal.
Thank you. I agree with my colleagues. I think that reducing the enforceable legal limit to 20 miles an hour, we should do because we can. And the 15-mile-an-hour advisory at the parklets should continue because it makes sense. It's advisory related to the activity adjacent. So I encouraging people to go less than 20 makes sense. I think a lot of people are doing it now. I want to continue doing that to the extent we can. And, having the 20-mile-an-hour, certainly up near Peralta, where we're seeing higher speeds, that would bring them down. And would like to see that. So it's safer to cross the street up there. Drivers have more time to see and react to pedestrians. So I'm in agreement. Thank you.
Yeah, I concur. I agree with all the comments, and I would add that in agreeing that posting 20 and advising 15 as parklets occur is still appropriate. And again, I also concur with what Mr. Freed said about how signs aren't going to change behavior, but they will help us enforce it as needed and create an atmosphere of hopefully calmer driving. It's part of the what's going on. So let's make sure we do that. I would say that if we're posting 20 and advising 15 sporadically, trying to put that on the road, that seems difficult and impractical. So I'm not necessarily in favor of that unless there's a well-articulated plan, which I don't see at this point. I personally wouldn't be looking for a lot of signs. We want to avoid sign clutter, and we do want to declare it certainly at the places people mostly enter onto Solano Avenue. But again, it's going to be how the avenue is designed going forward that's going to really enforce the speed limit. So this is an important component, but not the end all. So it sounds like we have fairly good consensus on comments? Do you need anything else from us?
No, I think that covered it. Thank you.
Commissioner Jevendal.
Just at the risk of stating the obvious, seems obvious to me. I totally trust staff's discretion at where to post signs, where it's practical and visible and all of that. To the extent that we're advocating for both the posted 20 and the advisory 15, whenever possible, we shouldn't post them kind of side by side. Each segment should have one or the other.
Well, I don't know. There might slow people down who are trying to look between the signs and decide which applies to them. You know, I mean, but then they're not paying attention to the road, so that's not good either. So I get your point.
Another reason to be thinking about it in conjunction with the outdoor dining program, because that'll potentially change as we switch to more permanent.
Yeah. Thank you for the clear presentation of data and the work that went into gathering that. And with that, let's move on to, item number 5.3, the selection of chair and vice chair. Mr. Freed didn't put it in this time, but essentially the city policy is to encourage commissions to change their chair and vice chair on a yearly basis. It's not required. There can be 2-year stretches of one chair if the commission so desires. I asked Mr. Freed to look back a little bit, and both Commissioner Del Rosario and I have been chair for 2 years out of the past 6, I think it was, just to give you some context. I wouldn't refuse to be chair, but this is the opportunity to have a fresh take on things and perhaps a little different rhythm to the meetings. And with that, I will open it to the commission. Commissioner Fong.
Also, just wanted to add, if anyone wants to be vice chair, that please step up as well. I have a lot of commitments this year, so just putting that out there.
Right, and I will remind.
I'm not looking to be chair, definitely, but if anyone wants to still be vice chair, also fine with me.
You can vouch that it's not a terribly taxing job. And just to remind folks, Commissioner Fong, while was as vice chair, was moderately in sort of in line to become chair, has asked not to because of his personal and professional requirements this year. Mr. Freed, help me out here. This is an item that normally would we have public comment on this or not?
I don't know if we've had public comment in the past, but it's an action item, so I think we need to take in public comment.
I'm sorry, I missed the last part of what you said.
I think we need to accept public comment. There's someone wanting.
And we have a hand raised. Should we get that out of the way?
Sure. Jeremiah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I did notice, I guess, possibly a member of this committee is not here tonight. I don't know. I try to be fair. I don't know if you guys wanted to table it just to include the other person. That way they can have a vote. I mean, it's completely up to you guys for sure. Ken, you're doing a great job. I would nominate you to keep going. You're really organized and you seem to present things very well to city council. I like the way you speak. And Jovendale, everybody does a really good job. So I just want to say keep up the good work and good luck on vice chair and chair.
Thank you for those encouraging words to all of us. And for a moment there, I thought you were going to suggest that since Commissioner Del Rosario wasn't here, this was an opportunity. But you did not, and I won't either. Commissioner Graham.
I was thinking the same thing. I have to say that I have reached my maximum capacity for like authority and responsibility. So I would rather not be chair, but I would be vice chair if so needed. Just throwing it out there. Or we could vote in Commissioner Del Rosario.
I'm not proposing that.
I mean,
Commissioner Chavandal, your toes are still at the line. Everybody else has stepped back or is not here.
Oh no. I just want to say I've done this often enough. I have no great aspiration to be chair, and I love to share the opportunity with everyone else. As much as I'd love for Commissioner Graham or Commissioner Fong to take on the role of chair, I understand being busy. That said, I would be perfectly happy to nominate Chair McCroskey to continue as chair and Commissioner Graham to step in as vice chair, if that's acceptable.
I'd second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Freed, would you take a roll call vote?
I know our recommendation separates out the action of the chair and the vice chair. I'm guessing that that's an order. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but let's, just to be safe, do the motion for the chair first and do a second round for the.
Yeah, happy to divide the motion into two. A motion to elect Chair McCroskey as continuing chair.
I can second that again.
And then a separate motion to elect Commissioner Graham as the vice chair.
Mr. Freed, would you take 2 roll call votes, please?
And I'll check for next time whether that's actually necessary, but apologies. Commissioner Graham.
yes.
Commissioner Zavindal.
Aye.
Vice Chair Fong.
Aye.
Chair McCroskey.
Yes.
Motion for McCloskey to be chair carries. All right, now it's the motion for vice chair for Commissioner Graham.
Yes.
Commissioner Graham.
Yes.
Commissioner Javanda.
Aye.
Vice Chair Fong.
Aye.
Chair McCroskey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Terrific. Thank you, Vice Chair Graham, for stepping up and for all of your support. I do enjoy doing this and we'll enjoy continuing. All right. That is the end of our possible action items. And we move on to item number 6, announcements. Do you have any announcements today?
I have one, and that is just to let you know that the local road safety plan contract was authorized. We've been authorized to go into contract at council on Tuesday. So we will be entering into contract with TJKM Transportation Consultants to do our local road safety plan, and hope to bring you the kickoff of that in very soon.
Great. Any announcements from the commission? Okay. Item number 7 is future agenda items. This is a chance for commissioners to ask for items to be on future agendas. We don't take public comment on this item and will not be. Do commissioners have any requests for future agenda items? Seeing none. We'll note that the next meeting is Thursday, March 24th at 7 p.m. We don't know at this point, I don't believe, Mr. Freed, if it will be a Zoom or in-person meeting.
I have not heard any new guidance yet.
Okay, so probably assume Zoom unless you hear otherwise. Great. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting and talk offline with Jeremiah about where I leave my pruning clippers. Thank you all, and for a good meeting, and look forward to seeing you next month.